once again for another evening of musings of the demented mind.
But are we going to have our intro music, Valkyrie?
Yes,
You
by
ready?
Jasmine Crowe.
Oh, Jasmine Crowe, chess game. Given rights to us by the Global Enlightenment Radio Network from the great and powerful, beautiful girl. Oh, she's gorgeous. Jasmine Crowe. And she loves this show.
Too much escape. Down on one knee in shining armor. Off of my feet, you know royalty. Diamonds and rings, a life of luxury. Living the dream, throwing away the key. Fooling like you run it, I'll ruling me. Can't lock me up, I'm gonna break out. This kingdom is crumbling, crumbling. Taking the crown, you're gonna bow down. Welcome to my chess game. You ain't gonna take the queen. In my corner, you the king. Better learn that I ain't playing. Welcome to my chess game. Won't be down on my knees like I'm losing my head. Ain't in distress, took the power instead. Diamonds and rings, yeah. Living the dream, yeah. A life of luxury, throwing away the key. Fooling like you run it, I'll ruling me. Can't lock me up, I'm gonna break out. This kingdom is crumbling, crumbling. Taking the crown, you're gonna bow down. Welcome to my chess game. You ain't gonna take the queen. In my corner, you the king. Better learn that I ain't playing. Welcome to my chess game. Welcome to my chess game. Got you to make a move and I'm just getting started. Know what I'm gonna do, stacking up the deck. I can surrender you, don't need your protection. Want me to take it back, keeping you in check. Yeah. Welcome to my chess game. You ain't gonna take the queen. In my corner, you the king. Better learn that I ain't playing. Welcome to my chess game. Welcome to my chess game.
And that was Jasmine Crowe's chess game. And that's officially given to Valkyrie McGill to play like a madman on his show if he chooses to. Valkyrie! It's all
Hey,
yours.
Jasmine.
Aye, aye.
Hello, everybody. Well, tonight I had planned to talk about something that Daryl asked me about, I think either last week or the week before. But we've had a conversation before on the biological reality of transgenderism. And one of the things that I couldn't find on the last time we talked this was an article that gave a short synopsis of the reality of chromosomes. The article is by Zoe Ellen Brain, and it's really short, so I'm just going to read it to you. In 1890, the X and Y chromosomes were discovered. It was found that the men who were tested had 46 chromosomes, including an X and a Y, while women who were tested also had 46 chromosomes, including 2 X chromosomes. Obviously, the conclusion was that the Y chromosome defined masculinity. At the time, it was a reasonable conclusion. Now, fast forward 50 years, and it was found that some men had 47 chromosomes, including 2 X's and a Y, while some women had 45, including only 1 X. Still, no problem with the Y chromosome defines masculinity idea. Then it was found that fully 1 in 300 men weren't 46XY.
46XY?
XY.
Oh, hold on. You sound like you're talking football here. 46XY? Hey, hey, hey.
46 chromosomes with an X and a Y chromosome.
Okay.
They discovered that some women have 46 chromosomes with an XY. After DNA was discovered in the 50s, it was found that the SRY gene, usually found on the Y chromosome, sometimes was missing and sometimes had been translocated to another chromosome. Hence, you had 46XX men and 46XY women. So they thought SRY defined masculinity. Then it was found out that some men didn't have an SRY chromosome at all, but some women did. Other genes were involved. Worse, you can have other factors such as androgen insensitivity, which made 46XY people female. We're talking fully male DNA, female body. And congenital adrenal hyperplasia, which makes you resistant to the effects of estrogen, would masculinize 46XX people. That means you had genetically females who were fully male. Then in the 70s, other syndromes, such as the 5-alpha reductase 2 deficiency, which cause babies to look like one sex at birth and then other sex at puberty. Worse, in some places, 1 in 50 infants had this natural sex change. It was not rare there. This is referenced to an article in Science magazine, 1974, December 27th. In an isolated village on the southwestern Dominican Republic, 2% of the live births were in the 1970s Guevadoshis. These children appeared to be girls at birth, but at puberty, these girls spout muscles, testes, and a penis. For the rest of their lives, they live as men. Born girl naturally turn male. In the 90s, it was found that hormonal hiccups in the womb cause some parts of the body to develop as one sex and others the other, regardless of the genetics involved. Male to female transgender people have female neuron numbers in a limbic nucleus. Basically, the brain is identical to the structure of a female's brain. The present findings of somatostatin neuronal sex differences in the BST and its sex reversal in the transsexual brain clearly support the paradigm that in transsexuals, sexual differentiation of the brain and genitals go into opposite direction. It's a matter of timing during fetal development. Sometimes a boy is born looking like a girl. Sometimes a girl is born looking like a boy, regardless of their DNA and their chromosomes. This is complex stuff. We don't teach the theory of general relativity in grade school. Newtonian physics, or at most special relativity, which is far simpler, is enough. Similarly, X is female, XY is male, is a good approximation unless you go into medicine or biology in college. It's only really relevant when talking about trans or intersex people. Just as with relativistic effects that only become relevant in the domain of the very big or very small or very, very fast, close to light speed. People do not need psychiatric help when they think that things get heavier, more massive, or as they go faster, while lengths contract. People do not need help when they think their sex is something different from their genetics. Intersex people exist. Trans people exist. They are unusual, so trying to apply the usual approximations is as silly as trying to apply Newtonian physics to things moving close to or at light speed. Legislating such things is as insane as legally ruling that pi equals 3, as has been done in the past. So what this means is that what you get taught in ideology has no bearing on physical reality. Trans people do not make a choice. They are not trans because they feel like it will give them an advantage, or it will make their lives better, or it will solve everything. It happens because of a genetic hiccup that causes the formation of the opposite gender brain before the body, which forms at a later time during gestation, receives the signals to turn it into the other gender, regardless of what the DNA may say. It means that there are women out there who are XY, but are nonetheless fully functional females. It means that there are men out there who are XX, but are yet fully functional males. And unless they go in for a chromosome check, you're never going to be able to tell what their DNA is. It means that there's no agenda for trans people. We're not out to infect people because what we have isn't infectious. It is a genetic defect that we have to deal with from the moment we're conceived. There's never a choice in it. The only choice that we have about it is whether we can deal with the dysphoria or not. Some people, it never bothers them. Other people, like me, it drives us slowly insane. But we've become the crux of an ideological war, and neither side represents reality in any way, shape, or form. In the Democrat, it's entirely oh, this is a choice. Anyone can choose to be whatever they want to, and we should just allow everything to go because our agenda is the complete destruction of the old stereotypical morality of heterosexuality and monogamy. We want it to be perfectly acceptable for everyone to be able to express themselves however they want. And unfortunately, there appears to be a large segment of pedophiles who are trying to represent themselves as just another shade of LGBTQ. And most of us in the LGBTQ movement don't approve of pedophilia. So they're trying to lump us in against our wills. There's no desire on my part to convert anyone. I've never once tried to tell somebody, oh, well, you should be transgender. I've become fairly well known in some transgender circles because I've written several articles on this in the past when I was working for Humanity Plus magazine and accelerator.com. It started because I wrote an article that the editor, Are You Serious?, titled Complete Gender Change in a Decade. At the time that I wrote this, back in like 2010, 2011, the research that was taking place was pretty much showing that gender is entirely a product of what hormones you get exposed to. It doesn't matter if you've got testes or ovaries. If you're exposed to a massive overdose of the opposite hormone, you will cause changes towards whatever gender the hormones you're receiving are given. That shows that your body obeys the hormones regardless of choice. There is no ability to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I think you should be, a female, so we're going to raise you as a female, we're going to treat you as a female, regardless of the fact that you're male with male genitalia, identify yourself as a male and everything else. We want you to be a woman. It can't be done. The psychologist Kinsey, who's well known for his study on human sexuality, tried to do this. He tried to take a group of people who were male and raise them as female, and a group of females and raise them as males. In no case was he actually successful. And in a couple of them, once he was done screwing them up, with his crackpot theories, they committed suicide. You can't force someone to be something if they're not. There's no way to seduce kids into being transgender. You can't dictate to somebody what sex they're going to be. That's one of the reasons why so many transgenders get so fucked up, because their entire lives they're being told they have to act like the gender that everyone sees them as. And they're never allowed to be anything other than what everyone tells them they're supposed to be. It drives people crazy. And you can't blame them for going insane over stuff like this. The whole movement of the liberals, trying to say that, we should be allowed to have a lifestyle choice and choose to be whatever lifestyle we choose to be. It's not a matter of choice. All I want is to look like my cute little demoness that you're looking at here. Why should it matter to anyone else what I desire to look for? I can understand some of the conservatives going like, well, you're going out there and trying to trick men into having sex with, and it's like, no, I'm not. I'm a lesbian. I don't try to trick any men into anything because I don't want to have anything to do with them. I mean, I've got one gay friend who's constantly, insisting that I need to marry him because he loves the way I cook. And I keep telling him that the only way I would do it would be to marry him for his life insurance and then, eliminate him. And he's like, well, just give me a few hugs before you do. So But then again, I also threatened to kill him off for all kinds of other stuff. He knows I'm joking. I'm not as violent as I pretend to be. But what you've had happen is, according to one of the articles I read, what appears to be a situation where a lot of liberal Democrats in California decided to switch genders and then discovered the prejudice against females that they never paid any attention to when they were men was suddenly hitting them, and they're going, but I want all the power that I used to have back. And so you've had the corruption of the entire transgender movement by the liberals in an effort to give themselves yet more power. Then you've had that same view poisoned in the Republican viewpoint with the whole idea that transgender people are making a choice and that they're looking to recruit other people into their lifestyle choice, and that, they're out to, preach to your kids and turn them into transgenders too, and that they're out there and trying to fool every man that they run across into sleeping with them, and it's just as harmful to reality of being a transgender as the liberal messages. Who I want to look like should be something that I decide. Who I am isn't up for everyone else to tell me. I get people like, you probably remember when Bob was here, about how I need to just cope and deal. And that I quote, I chose, this, before I was ever born, my higher self, made the decision. And my reply to that is, well, my higher self needs to get its ass kicked. I haven't made a choice. I've tried over and over and over, and I don't know how many times, to just deal with it, to just cope, to just, accept it and deal with it and everything else. And it hasn't worked. I've lost 3 wives because I was girlier than they were. They couldn't handle the fact that I wore skirts better than any of them did. I cooked, I cleaned, I did all the housework. I've been called a Japanese housewife more often than I can count. I've done most of the traditional female stuff, and doesn't bother me in the slightest. I mean, all 3 of my wives didn't know how to cook. One of them could manage baking if it didn't go much beyond cookies or cake, but cooking anything was beyond her. I had another one who tried to roast a baked potato in the microwave for 40 minutes. It made a very nice rubber ball. I can remember the time she cooked chicken and we had to invite the local fire department to come put out the fire in the oven where she set the chicken on fire. I'm the girly type. I'm into lace and ruffles and cute little goth lolly outfits and everything else. And, you know, all the girls that I've gotten ended up being upset because I was a better girl than they were. And I know this because they've yelled at me and screamed at me and everything else about how, you know, they couldn't handle my girliness. I don't care what anyone thinks of me. If I did, I wouldn't bother to run a show like this. I wouldn't have a picture of myself sitting in Second Life, you know, for my screen share and whatnot. I've spent my entire career being upfront with people about who I am and what I am. 90% of the arguments that I hear from random people don't apply to me. And yet these are considered to be universal views of transgender people. They have nothing to do with reality. They got a stereotype that they have been given to sell an ideological viewpoint that has nothing to do with reality. The reality is there's a small number of people in the world who suffer from a genetic defect which causes them to be transgender. A small percentage of this small percentage, which is about equal to the percentage of gay people in the normal population, you have basically gay transgender, like me. You know, I want to be a female, but I'm a lesbian. I'm only interested in women. I know transgenders who have stated that I couldn't possibly be a true transgender because I'm not being a slut with every guy I see. You know, no, I'm a slut with every girl I see. You know, it's just because I want to be a girl doesn't change the fact that I'm attracted to girls. But we only recently managed to get it uncategorized as being a fetish. You know, because one researcher who has been thoroughly discredited by now was claiming that the only transgender women who were into women were just fetishizing their self-image. You know, they wanted to be female for their own sexual gratification. It's like, I can understand where the view originated, but the evidence, the actual scientific evidence, and the actual, you know, psychology of the people involved in the study disproved this. But because he was so vocal, it got put into the diagnostic manual for psychological disorders for almost a decade before it got corrected. And even today, you know, if you go to a psychiatrist, rather than look at the diagnostic manual, you'll have something like I had with a Freudian psychiatrist who was absolutely convinced that my transgender issues were due to my having a bad relationship with my mother. I get along pretty well with my mother. Don't ever have any problems with her that I know of. But that was their excuse for not diagnosing me as a true transgender. because her Freudian ideology insisted that I had to, worship a penis and feel superior, with having one and everything. And it's like, I sometimes wonder exactly how much Freud set psychology back with his whole penis worship ideology. To be blunt, I don't even want just to be female. I mean, if a poor approximation was all I was interested in, and I'd had the money, it would already be over and done with. I'm not interested in being a poor approximation of a female. I'd love to get to the point where I could change things all the way down to the genetic level, and just be myself for the first time ever in my entire fucking life. It's likely to be several more years before that's possible, at least in public technology. I already know that it's possible with the technology discussed in the secret space program, because you'll run into I don't know how many people who keep talking about how they got cloned in, alternating male and female bodies, where they'd be cloned as one gender and then the other, and then, whatnot. So there's every indication based on the collected circumstantial evidence that I could look exactly like my avatar here in front of you and walk around, daily life, because that kind of technology exists, according to, the secret space program people. But it's not public, because having that kind of technology means you have to admit to people that 90% of the causes of death today are completely, totally avoidable. That, no one has to die of heart disease. No one has to die of cancer. No one has to die of anything being caused by our destructive diets, our ruinous medical system, and everything that is designed to profit off of you and I suffering. We're made to be unhealthy because it's profitable. Happy, healthy humans don't make the money for the corporations that constantly sick, constantly having to go to the doctor, constantly having medical issues and everything else make for the pharmaceutical companies. There's too much ideology being brandied about without any acknowledgement of the actual scientific facts. And to be honest, as a transgender, I'm sick of being used for political talking points. I'm sick of having people who randomly say I need to die because they've been listening to one political ideology or another. I'm sick of telling people that my right to exist doesn't depend on their political viewpoint. But they want to make it that way. If I don't absolutely agree with their politics, then I need to be eliminated because I'm obviously, an abomination or whatever. I mean, it's happened. It's like with this whole market crash that's in the process of being engineered. They're doing this to try and restore the idea that things are really, truly scarce. Because they don't want you to know that we're burning food crops in our cars with ethanol. They don't want us to know that we're paying farmers not to grow because the prices at the grocery store need to go higher for profits. We don't want people to know that we have enough food production on this planet that no one anywhere needs to go hungry. There wouldn't be famines going on in Africa except for the fact that someone is making a profit off of it. If you send food supplies to some of these places, their local government takes it and hawks it on the black market so that the politicians there can get rich. We're upset over rising grain prices and how the rising grain prices is causing a rise in beef and other meats, but it's an engineered process where we've had 100 some odd food production plants destroyed, millions of heads of cattle killed, millions of chickens killed, millions of ducks killed, millions of every type of food animal, massacred for, this disease or that disease or whatever, and all these food plants burning down. They're creating an artificial shortage to convince people that the resources are scarce when they're not and haven't been for a long time. The whole world is being held hostage so these people can make money. They view everyone as cattle to be exploited. And you people are putting up with it. You're going, sure, okay, no worry, we'll just pay the higher price at the pump. We'll pay the higher price at the grocery store because we refuse to do anything about it. You could put a stop to all of it tomorrow if everybody in the nation walked off their job. Corporations would be in an absolute fucking panic. And if you did it every time they did something that you didn't like, before long, they would be bending over backwards to do their jobs and serve you as their customers. But you won't do it. And so you get what we get now. I have a target painted on my back just for existing. I have to acknowledge the reality that if push comes to shove, I'm probably going to be one of the first people on the chopping block. because I'm not part of the herd in any way, shape, or form. I can't even successfully blend in with the herd. Which means that when it comes time to eliminate the undesirables, I'm probably top on the list. You know, when it comes to everyone starving to death, I'll probably be one of the people who starves to death. It's just a fact of my life. I go and try to get any aid or assistance, and I'm met with, one hurdle after another I have to jump over because I'm white and because I'm male, whether I want to be or not. Just by being those two things, I'm considered the most expendable person in America. I can remember living down in Florida, going to the health department in Florida and having to sit and wait for 8 hours to be able to see a doctor, as every illegal immigrant who got there before me and after me was seen, while I had to sit and wait and wait and wait because I wasn't one of the politically catered to classes. It's just a reality I've had to put up with. I've had to put up with being called names every time I go out to a place where a large number of Black people are. Even though I have best friends who are Black and who have been friends for decades. I've had to deal with, constant assumptions about who I am and what I am because of my skin color. But nobody gives a damn because I'm not one of the politically expedient protected classes. I empathize with everything that is wrong with this country in the way of prejudice against anyone of any color. It's not reserved for one group or another. It's found in every group that doesn't act as part of the herd. If you're not a member of the herd, you're a danger and have to be eliminated. The reasons why don't matter. The simple existence of someone who is not in line with the herd is considered sufficient motive for elimination. You're not allowed to question. You're not allowed to have any ideas that are not spoon-fed to you by the authorities. I did poorly in school, despite the fact that I could ace any test they gave me and that my SAT scores qualified me to go to MIT. Because I didn't deal well with the idea that I wasn't allowed to question when I saw errors in logic. I wasn't allowed to question when evidence was against what I was being told. And believe me, if you've never been to a fundamentalist Christian school, you're probably not experienced in the kind of you must listen to authority and never question that you get from religion. You're not allowed to question what you are told by the pastor. You're not allowed to think about, what the Bible says without having it interpreted for you. And you being told what you're supposed to believe based on such and such a message. I questioned. I questioned so constantly that I kept in constant trouble. I have been paddled on the ass with a 2x4 more often than I can even remember. I went down to the office every day for it for one entire school year because of a feud I had going on with a teacher over homework and how unnecessary it was. And we're not talking about, some frail old principal. We're talking about the 6'5" hulk of a gym teacher applying a 2x4 to my rear end every day for a year. Trust me, you haven't experienced the kind of authoritarianism that is normal in a religious institution. I've got people, who are, we need to go to a private school that teaches our religion. And I'm like, how is that any different than, selling your kid into slavery? I know my parents were doing what they thought was best for me, but they have zero comprehension of the torture they put me through for 8 years going to this fundamentalist private school. Because I had a brain and I couldn't sit still when I kept seeing contradictions. I couldn't just blindly sit back and obey authority just because it was authority. Never have been able to. Been one of the biggest problems I've had in my work life is the fact that I will be more than happy to do anything if there is a legitimate reason to. But if it's being done for little to no purpose other than to look busy, I, generally speaking, won't do it. I had to deal with a case recently where I was supposed to clean the grease hoods over a grill when I was not a licensed hood cleaner with the proper materials and equipment to do so safely. And when I pointed this out to my boss, it started a knockdown, scream out argument over whether or not I wanted to keep my job. And I'm like, you're asking me to do something which is illegal in this state, which has regulations on the proper equipment and methods for cleaning grease hoods. And she couldn't understand why I wouldn't just do it. I'm a person who's driven by reason. If there's a reason for doing something, I can do it. If there's not a real reason for me to be doing it, or there are reasons for me not to be doing it, I'm not going to just go with, oh, I told you so, as being all that I need. It's the same with, you know, the transgender issues. I have been studying this since I was before a teen. I mean, I realized I identified the reason why everything appeared wrong to me all the time when I was like 8 years old. I can remember the very first box set of Dungeons and Dragons. My grandparents bought this for me as a birthday present. And this was during the era where the movie Mazes and Monsters came out. And there was this huge, stare about how Dungeons and Dragons was a gateway to black magic and Satanism and everything else. Well, I had the box set, and I can remember spending a week pouring through all of the rules to determine whether there was a rule against playing a opposite gender character in Dungeons and Dragons. And for anyone who's curious, no, there isn't. I never found one. But I only had 2 weeks to look through it before my parents went to a sermon at church about the evils of Dungeons and Dragons, and I was getting my birthday present taken away and thrown into the fireplace. I've dealt with, religious hysteria far too often in my life. It's psychotic, but most of life is psychotic. I'm sure you know by now. The ideology of transgenderism, which is it being a choice, there being an actual agenda, there's a push by transgender people to normalize it and make it something that people accept without thinking about it. I can't say that is a deliberate agenda, but it's also something that I can't take an issue with in some aspects. Because from my point of view, as I'm sure you've heard with my talks on morphological freedom, I don't care if someone is black, white, yellow, or pink with purple polka dots. There is a future coming where everything can be changed, where it doesn't matter if you're born any, ethnic type, you can change at a whim. Where a kid growing up can flip-flop back and forth between male and female until they come to a decision as to which one they're more comfortable with. Where DNA is going to be as easy to change as hair color. Where your body can be altered in any way that you desire, including, in my case, adding wings, hooves, horns, a tail, etc. I already know that they can use stem cells to regrow teeth. Ugh. I know that they can use stem cells to regrow the fatty tissue for breasts, for breast replacement surgery for cancer victims. The victims who've had mastectomies for breast cancer, you can rebuild a actual biological tissue breast using stem cells. It's not at a fully functional stage yet, but we are going to get there eventually. And I don't think it's going to be too many more decades down the road. We're talking about the ability to where if you don't like anything about yourself, it can be changed from eye color to, body type to male or female, whether you have pointed ears or not, eventually you're going to get to a part where DNA is going to be as mix and matchable as Legos. And yeah, you're going to have furries walking around. You're going to have mythological creatures walking around. You're going to have Naga slithering down the street and centaurs, taking a gallop in the park. You're going to have vampires, stalking around looking for someone to bite. You're going to have wolfmen roaming around in packs. This is a reality that is going to come. No, it's not right now, but it is in the process of developing. And if you honestly think that the future from a perspective of individual people is going to look like Star Trek, well, you're not very imaginative, because even Star Trek doesn't properly use its own technology. One of the things that I've talked about repeatedly is that the transporter turns you into a computer program, transmits that program to a remote location, and then uses that program to reconstruct you atom by atom. You're basically having a body that is completely disassembled, converted for a period of time into a program that tells the transmitter how to place the atoms back together using atoms located at the destination. So the person that you were is being disassembled on the ship and reassembled from completely different atoms at your location. Now, given a large enough sample of people using a transporter, it should be possible to modify any individual pattern in that transporter, so that you could start with a male on the platform and materialize as a female at the destination. Or you could take someone who's missing limbs and have them back when they arrive at the destination. They finally, towards the end of Star Trek, dealt with giving Worf a brand new spine using replicator technology, but they barely scratched the surface of what transporter technology would have made possible in the medical fields. You're talking humans who could transform into Vulcans or Klingons or Andorans or whatever, because all you need is the basic pattern of someone from that species, and you would be able to adjust the program so that the external experience or appearance would be of that other race. Depending on how complex the modeling was, isolating out the brain from the rest of the body and preventing any changes to it while remodeling the rest of the body should be possible. But that's not something that anyone who came up with this technology in Hollywood ever thought about to that extent. We're going to have to deal with medical technologies, whether you want to, give credence to the med beds described by the SSP people, or if you want to think about the more pedestrian way that I've come up with using stem cells and a Da Vinci robot, where your entire body could be disassembled down to your brain and your spinal column and rebuilt however you want it to be. Where you could take a fucking 6'5" gorilla like me and turn me into the 4'11" cutie you see on your screen. God, I would give anything to stop looking like a mafia hitman. I mean, I honestly hate looking like a mook. But this is all going to be possible eventually. It's not possible now, and it's being turned into ideologies which run counter to the actual reality as established in science, because the actual science is inconvenient for the ideologies. The ideology, is all about pushing a political agenda. And as an LGBTQ, I'm not comfortable with the agenda on either side. It doesn't make a difference whether it's the liberal ideology or the conservative ideology. Both of them are doing little more than painting a target on my back. The existence of transgender people is not a new or modern thing. It has been part of history all through history. There was a British governor of one of the early states of America who was his queen's representative to the extreme, as it was stated at the time, because he would never appear in public in anything other than full female outfits. There was a pope who was exposed to be female when she came up pregnant, back in the age when men and men alone were allowed any sort of position in the church hierarchy. You've got a couple of others who were known for acting and dressing like women through history. It's only as big of an issue now because of the fact that we actually have the beginnings of the technology to change the body to conform with the mental image. If you really care about eliminating the genetic defect, then it's in your best interest to allow every transgender person to transition. Because after transitioning, right now, with this technology, reproduction can't be done, which means they basically bleed themselves out of the gene pool. But if you really think like that, you want to do it now, because before very long, the technology is going to exist where you can change your gender and be a fully functional reproducer of the opposite gender. We're talking female to male with working penises who can get women pregnant. We're talking about male to female transgenders with working uteruses who can get pregnant. And not because they're a female, who looks like a man and, got pregnant by having, intercourse as a female. You're going to have to accept that people are strange. You're going to have to learn to accept that everyone has differences. I have no interest in men as a transgender. I don't find them sexually attractive. I don't find the idea of sex with them, appealing. The only thing I've ever been interested in is women. And yes, I've tried the whole getting along with a guy, and it ends up being a disaster. I'm not cut out to either be male or be in a relationship with a male. And you can only try so many times before you realize that it's always going to end in failure. I can't tell you the number of people who tell me, well, just give it up and go date a guy. And I'm like, guys drive me nuts. I'd end up killing him inside of 6 months. It's been there, done that, tried that, failed miserably. The gay men who get along with other men just perplex me because I don't see how they can do it. I can barely see how women get along with most men. And, it's, but regardless, the reality that everyone needs to be aware of is that not even genetics can truly define someone's gender. Because, as pointed out in the original article that I read, there are women with XY chromosomes. There are men with XX XX chromosomes. There are both sexes who have XXY chromosome and XYY chromosomes. The genetics are not the simple definitions of your male or female in every case. Yes, 98% of humanity is probably one or the other. The other 2% can range from being the opposite gender from what their body appears like to multiple choice as to what they are. And the only commonality any of us have is the fact that we get judged by everyone else by their personal experience as male or female. They have never once questioned anything about themselves. So they can't understand how anyone can question it. It's like if you've never been fishing, you can't form a real opinion about it. You can say it looks boring. You could say it looks like the most exciting thing in the world. You could say it looks like a heck of a lot of effort for very little gain. Myself, I consider it something that I never, ever want to do again because I was so bored out of my mind. My dad could enjoy it. Sure, I got to spend an entire day sitting on a lake, letting him have all the fun he wanted. And me sitting there going like, oh my God, why can't I just die? It wasn't for me. The same goes with hunting. My dad was a huge hunter. There were at least 5 deer heads up on our walls my entire childhood. He'd travel all over the country to go hunting. He'd go up to Montana to hunt elk and whatnot. We go to the Everglades to hunt white-tailed deer. I've shot a deer because I was more or less made to by my father. I've shot a boar for the same reason. My dad wanted to share with me the joy of hunting. And when he realized, finally, that I took absolutely no joy in it, he gave up. Same thing when it came to sports. He always wanted your all-American varsity cheerleader, hero, the most valuable player in every varsity sports in high school. I mean, that was one of the reasons that when I was adopted, they thought that the large frame that I have would indicate that, I'd grow up to be a sports guy. My dad rode bulls in a rodeo. He was your super masculine, manly man. Me? I was the bookish girly girl. And he never succeeded in turning me into the manly man that he wanted. Instead, my sister, the high school cheerleader who was head of the squad and who married that most valuable player in every varsity sports that my dad wanted as a son, provided him with the ideal son that he always wanted. And me, I was just me. Still am me. Can't stop being me. So everyone's tried so very, very hard to make me stop being me and be who they want me to be. I just never could manage to stop being who I am. I've known most all of my life who I was. I started reading the psychology books, the actual college level textbook psychology manuals, when I could check them out of the library when I was 10 years old. I have been studying the psychology of being transgender for half my life. You know, it's been a subject of my writing. You know, it's been a subject of my researches into medical technology. It's all based on how far are we away from when I can actually get the body that I am in my head. I know by most people I'm crazy. I know that by the definitions of pure sanity, viewing what you see on the screen as the real me is not what the average person would consider sane. Doesn't change my reality. You know, I've been a demoness since as long as I can remember. Because when I dream at night, this is who I am. This is the body that I have in my dreams. And I can't tell you the number of dreams I've had of being in a dress shop looking for clothes to fit wings and a tail. It's a normal dream for me. The only future I'm interested in as a transgender is a future where I can have the body that I desire and not have to deal with people wanting me dead for having it. I mean, why should you care what I look like? I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you're Hispanic. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're Asian. I don't care if you're an alien. I don't care if you are pink with purple polka dots, like I keep saying. Your appearance doesn't matter to me. So why should mine matter to you? If I want to look like a little demoness and go running around, you know, flirting with every girl that I see and probably get turned down by every girl I see, I'm fairly used to that too, then what business is it of yours? That's my view on all of it. And that ties into something that I keep pointing out to people that they never want to pay attention to. I've told people time and time again that you might as well give up on the idea that you will not be under surveillance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You've already having experiences with Ask Google and Alexa and everything, listening to you from your phone or from your Alexa station or whatever. You've got the fact that your computer now has a virtual assistant by the name of Cortana who can use your microphone to listen to you at all times of the day. You've got a webcam on many systems where you can't even tell when it's on or not. You've got smart TVs that are listening to every word you say so that they can change the channel when you say change the channel and transmit everything you say to someone else who's listening. I even posted on my Facebook recently about a USB cable, a regular looking USB cable that acts just like a regular USB cable, but contains a microchip that creates a backdoor into your computer and gives a remote user complete access if you plug this USB cable in. And this chip includes a remote ability to cause it to self-destruct, to essentially short the chip out and make it useless and make it impossible to tell what the chip did because it shorted itself out. This is for sale on the internet. It's not even on the dark web. It's just for sale, wide out in the open. For anyone who knows what it's called and can look it up by name. I wrote before about how cryptography isn't any kind of solution because technology like this USB cable exists. Your cryptography isn't going to mean anything if your computer is wide open to spying through a cable like this. How are you going to know if your next DVI or HDMI cable doesn't have a chip in it that enables broadcasting to an external source of everything that is shown on your screen? They don't have to decrypt anything. All they've got to do is look at your screen where it's been unencrypted to begin with. Cryptography is meaningless for a truly secure system. Additionally, we're developing quantum systems that can take 25 seconds to decrypt a quantum cryptography code that would have taken 200 years for a standard computer to crack. Your concepts of privacy are going to have to change because people are going to have to realize that privacy is something that we as humans grant one another. Like when you go to a restaurant and you have all the people who are sitting at all the tables around you who you can't at any given moment tell what they're doing because you're actively giving them privacy, just like they are actively giving you privacy. You're going to have to get used to the idea of being on camera because your virtual reality environments are going to require sensors far more invasive than a simple camera. Your ability to have a virtual assistant is going to require far more invasive sensors than a basic camera. You're going to have to accept surveillance through your cell phone so that it can keep track of where you are in a combined augmented reality and solid reality world. So that when you step off that train and feel like calling up a holograph of the map of the local area, the station knows exactly where you are to give you a "you are here" pin as you're walking through the station looking for the exit. It's going to need to know where you are in a virtual environment so that as you're walking up to a corner and a car is coming, it can let you know that there is a car around the corner that you can't see that is likely to run you over if you don't stop walking. There is no future that I can see that does not have universal surveillance. The question is whether we use that universal surveillance against those who want to use it against us, or we just give up before we even start and allow them to do whatever they want to. I mean, it's already being exposed that all that data they collected during the COVID is now being used by the government for targeting different individuals for this, that, and everything else. Most people don't realize that the more you shine light on everything, the fewer shadows there are to hide away in. If they're wanting the world to tweet everything they eat and everything they do and when they go to the doctor or the bathroom or whatever else, then they're going to have to accept the fact that those people are going to be tweeting what they do when they're around rich and wealthy people. That, that little, cell phone that they've got in their pocket, is just as likely to be turned on and recording as it is not to be. Now, think about when you go to the point where you've got contact lenses with cameras built into them so that they can overlay virtual items on the actual reality that you're looking on. So that as you're looking forward, you've got a virtual heads-up display on your contact lens that you can see and read and develop data on. And those contact lenses are being worn around politicians and recording everything they say or do at every moment of the day. Or when the maids and waitresses and butlers and manservants and everything else, are just as likely to be recording everything you do as, the paparazzi. When your very house has to have surveillance inside it just because you're using it to access all sorts of virtual reality gimmicks and gadgets and, things like that. Yes, you and I are going to have surveillance. So are these rich, wealthy, and powerful people, because they're going to be doing the same thing you're doing with those surveillance technologies. They're going to be using them to access the web and to access Meta and access, virtual environments and everything else. They're going to be using the same gadgets and gizmos and little widgets up in their heads-up displays that you are. So they're going to be just as on camera as you are. And when everyone, everywhere is on camera, we're going to have no choice about learning to be a lot more tolerant and understanding about differences among people than we are now. There are things like being gay that, yes, we're going to have to remove the stigmata for. Things like being transgender that we're going to have to remove the stigmata from. Being furry, you're going to have to remove the stigmata from. Because these people aren't going to up and vanish anytime soon. In fact, the longer it takes before you just accept them as normal people, the more in their face they're going to end up being. Because I can assure you, from all of the hundreds of people that I know in Second Life who are furries, the moment the technology is available to allow them to be their furry personas, they're going to jump at it. Just like there's all those cosplayers who will pay a fortune to look like an anime girl or an anime boy or an anime, monster girl or whatever, or who's going to pay to look like, their orc in World of Warcraft. You've got people who have a demand for this. And corporations are going to want to feed that demand because it's an as yet untapped market. That's why the whole cosplay industry has gone from little small conventions with a few dozen people sewing their own outfits to being $1 billion a year costuming industry, where you can have professionally made cosplay outfits mailed to you anywhere in the world. There will be a demand for it. No matter how much outcry there is by the, quote, normies. We're going to have very little choice about being more accepting of people who are different and not in lockstep with the herd. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to piss an awful lot of people off. There's probably going to be quite a few murders over it. And for all I know, I'll be one of them. But there's no preventing it that I can see. I know nobody wants to think about it, because no matter how many people I've told this kind of stuff about, over the last few decades, everyone wants to deny it because it doesn't correspond to what they've lived with, to present in their life. And it's like, yeah, because the technology hasn't existed prior to now. The technology is developing. You may not like it. You may not like a world where your child may decide to change gender 25 times before they settle down as to what they actually want to be. You may have to give up on the idea that some people don't have a choice about being what they are. That, it's not a deliberate decision that they made just to piss you off, or just to go against God, or just whatever. That it might actually have to deal with a genetic quirk that they had no choice over from the moment they were fucking born. And you're probably going to have to give up on the idea that these people are usable as political tools for whatever reason that you desire. It's insulting to me that I have to deal with all of the lies put forth on both sides about what being transgender is. I've got no agenda. I'm not interested in converting people to transgenders. My so-called advocacy is solely my attempt to explain to people why I am transgender and what my views on it are, not as a credo or a manifesto or, this is my goal for, sometime in the future for everybody. I want everybody to deal with this and, do as, I want them to be. Sure, it would be wonderful if people, could be more open-minded, but typically they're not going to be, because they've been told since they were kids that reality is this, and anytime that reality conflicts with that viewpoint, they get propagandized. They get told, oh, well, no, the ideology says this, so you've got to believe this. You've got doctors out there who are causing massive harm to children who are transgender by the whole argument that a kid can't possibly know what they really are. Well, yes, a poorly educated child in all likelihood cannot truly understand what they're saying, but one who's is educated can make an informed decision. I had the education when I was 8 years old to look it up, study it, go through the textbooks, and form a opinion on my own. But no, not every kid is that way. And if I had been living in a modern era, I might have stood a better chance of being able to convince my parents and my psychologist of the reality that I was dealing with, rather than it just being, my fantasy life. I grew up terrified that I was going to be burned at the stake if I told anybody about who and what I was. it took me until I was in my early 20s, before I finally just got so fed up and said, I don't give a flying fuck anymore. And just started pointing out, I don't care, what you may think about it, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm a girl. I still have to put up with, even people who know me well misgendering me, but it's not somebody to cut somebody's head off for. I mean, it can be annoying, but I have to deal with the fact that not everybody understands what it means to someone like me. Regardless, the politicization that has been going on, in my opinion, is far more harmful than it is benefiting people like me. It's removing the reality that we weren't given a choice and making us out to be little snowflakes who are throwing hissy fits because, people are wanting to get in the way of our little fantasy lives. I mean, I've had to deal with that my whole fucking life. If I could be comfortable being a male, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't have been through what I've been through in my life. I wouldn't be, a failure so many times over at being male. I'm a very good girl, but a very poor male. I've tried doing everything that I was supposed to do as a man. I was supportive. I tried to be a good father. I tried to do all the things that the man was supposed to do in the way of being a breadwinner and everything else. And well, after all of it, I'm a very good housewife, but I'm not really much of anything else. And that's just all there is to it. I mean, this big brain that I supposedly have hasn't made a difference in any way, shape, or form in the way my life has been, because it's been overshadowed by the fact that I was born transgender. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are if you are not a card-carrying member of the herd, acting and behaving the way the herd tells you to. So, regardless, it's not going to change just by me complaining about it. The only thing that's going to change is if we gradually learn to tolerate one another as actual people and not stereotypes. And, well, no matter how I look at it, that's not something that I can do by myself. And it's not something that can be done overnight. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Because anytime you try to heal any sort of long festering wound, the first thing you've got to do is expose it so that all of that festering pus can get out of the wound before you can ever stand a chance of healing it. And that's the truth of racism. That's the truth of homophobia. That's the truth of transphobia. There's a dark pus-filled infection that has to be cut open and allowed to drain before anything can be healed. And unfortunately, that means that you're going to have all these people who secretly held these views coming out of the woodwork, defending them, and believing how justified they are, because they've held these views their entire life because they never knew any better. It's going to take time to educate people in reality, particularly when everything on the media today is almost pure fiction. It's all about messaging and telling you what to believe rather than giving you the facts. There's not a single Walter Cronkite on the news anymore who's willing to give us just the facts. It's always a viewpoint, an opinion piece, well, this happens, but this is what we feel about it. And it's a manufactured reality. And it is going to come crashing down. And I don't see a way around it. I hate to tell it to you people, but a bunch of us are probably going to starve in the very near future. A bunch of us are going to be treated as useless and undesirable and, in need of being eliminated for the good of society because we don't fit the narrative. And I've known for decades that I'm probably very high up on that list of people to be taken out into the middle of town square and strung up by the neck until I'm dead. There's nothing I can do about it. I can lay low, in my house as much as possible, but I can't stop a mob from coming to my door and breaking it down and dragging me out to make an example of me just because I don't agree with the political narrative or because I don't conform to the herd's concept of normal. And a lot of other people out there are going to be in that same boat with me. And I really wish that wasn't the truth. But as I keep telling people, all I can tell you is the truth as I see it. Whether you believe anything I have to say is up to you. Whether you listen to anything I say is up to you. Ideally, I would love it if you actually went and researched any of this stuff on your own rather than just taking my word for it. Because even though I know what I am saying is true from the perspective of physical science and my own experience unless you also study and confirm and do your own research. You've got no way of knowing whether I'm lying my ass off. I could be sitting here making shit up, and you would never know it if you never double check me. Just like if you never double check that talking head on CNN or Fox News or any news channel. Doesn't matter if they're an alternative news channel or mainstream media. I mean, even my fellow hosts here on Gurn, I recommend researching anything they tell you. Simply because I might trust what they say because I know them and I've learned to trust them. But just because I trust them doesn't mean that they're 100% trustworthy. I have been fooled. I have had blinders pulled in front of my eye. I'm not ashamed to admit that Barack Obama had me completely fooled. I thought he was actually going to try to help the nation, and all he did was muddle and mess everything up and lead the way towards what we have now. And anyway, it is the end of my show time. It's been a full 2 hours of Val ranting and raving. So hang on just a moment. I got a phone call.
Hello. This is your phone call here. My name is Oscar De La Rente. You know who I am.
Hello?
My name is Oscar De La Rente.
Middle of my show. Call back in 15 minutes.
Oscar De La Rente, that's my name. And I want you to know, if you ask me again, I'll tell you the same.
No, that was my movie buddy who comes over and watches movies with me.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I'm Oscar De La Rente, and if you ask me again, I'm going to tell you the same.
Hey, Valkyrie, a great show tonight. I give you a lot of credit, and I think...
Did you think I could do the whole full 2 hours?
You did it with honor and grace, and I'm proud of you. And I'm proud that you've ever revealed people, to the people, how the ideologies that they've been brought up with are so wrong and incorrect. Valkyrie, Ice McGill, say goodnight to the people, and let me tell you, that's my Valkyrie, and ain't nobody better than my Valkyrie. Thank you very much. Odin, out.
Well, this is Valkyrie saying, good night, Valkyrie.